The Cursed Bride. St. Michael's Church was bathed in soft golden light, streaming through the stained glass windows. The air was filled with the scent of wax and incense, and the only sound breaking the silence was the hushed whispers of guests seated on the wooden pews. Today was the happiest day of Michael's life. He stood at the altar, his back straight, dressed in a classic black suit. His palms were slightly sweaty, but he wasn't nervous. On the contrary, his heart was full of joy. Soon Sophie would stand before him, his love, his future wife. The organ began to play and all heads turned toward the door. She appeared. Sophie walked down the aisle slowly, gracefully. Her wedding gown was dazzling white, its long train trailing behind her like a delicate cloud. Her hair was styled in an elegant bun, and beneath the sheer veil, her face was radiant, refined, soft, with deep brown eyes. She looked at Michael with tenderness and love. He couldn't look away. She was perfect. When Sophie reached the altar, he took her hand. It was warm, alive, familiar. Father Gabriel, an elderly priest with a wrinkled face, looked at the couple. His gaze lingered on the bride for just a second, but he said nothing. The ceremony began. The priest recited prayers, his voice calm and solemn. The atmosphere in the church was one of sanctity, purity, and divine blessing. But at some point, Michael felt something strange, as if the air had thickened. A faint draft swept through the church, making the candles tremble. He glanced at the guests. No one seemed to notice. Sophie was smiling. Her lips were soft, warm. But her eyes, for just a second, their color changed. Dark, almost black, with a crimson gleam. It lasted only a moment. Michael blinked, and everything was normal again. He told himself it was just his imagination. Father Gabriel continued, "Before God and these witnesses, let this union be sealed." He took 2 crowns, blessed them. The moment he placed the crown on Sophie's head, the candles flickered violently. One of them went out. The guests shuddered. But the priest, hiding his unease, quickly crossed himself and carried on. "So be it." At that moment, Michael heard something he shouldn't have. A quiet whisper, indistinct, as if someone was speaking in an ancient language right behind him. He turned, but there was no one there. Was it just the tension of the wedding? He shrugged and smiled. "You are now my wife, Sophie." "And you are my husband, Michael," she whispered, squeezing his fingers just a little too tightly. She looked at him in a way she never had before. Opulent decor, intricate ceiling moldings, a grand bed draped in crimson sheets. Sophie was breathtaking. She stood by the window, dressed in nothing but a delicate lace slip, her long hair cascading over her shoulders. Michael approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist, pressing his lips to her neck. Her skin was hot, a little warmer than usual, but he didn't notice. Her breathing quickened. She turned to him, her lips hungry, demanding. They fell onto the bed, tangled in kisses. She was insatiable. Michael was entranced. Every movement, every curve of her body ignited something inside him like never before. She scratched his back, leaving deep crimson trails. She bit him. She demanded. And in the moment they both reached their peak, he heard it, the whisper. His eyes snapped open. In the darkness of the suite, he saw their reflection in the mirror. But something was wrong. Sophie wasn't the same. Her face, her lips were stretched into an unnatural grin. Her eyes gleamed with a crimson glow. Her nails were longer than they should be. She was watching him through the mirror, and she whispered, "I want more, Michael. So much more." That night he woke to a strange sensation, as if someone was caressing his chest. He opened his eyes. Sophie was awake. She sat beside him, staring. "You want it too, don't you?" Her voice was lower than usual. She traced her fingers over his lips, slid them downward, tightened her grip around his wrists. He tried to move, but he couldn't. His body wouldn't respond. Sophie's lips curled into a smile. "You will scream when I break you." And then her eyes turned completely black. The lake house was perfect. A small wooden cottage nestled deep in the forest stood right at the edge of the dark water. It was quiet, secluded. Only the rustling leaves and the occasional ripple of the lake reminded them of the outside world. The perfect place for newlyweds, for Michael and Sophie. He was happy. It felt like a fairy tale. A beautiful wife, romance, days filled with passion. But from the very first night, he realized Sophie had changed. That night, Michael woke up to a scream. It was Sophie. She lay naked on the bed, her back arched in a violent spasm, her mouth wide open, strange guttural sounds pouring from her throat. She was speaking in her sleep, but not in English. The words sounded like an incantation, a prayer to something ancient. Ego sum carnis tua. Ego sum sanguis tuus. Sex with her was incredible. She was insatiable. Every night, sometimes multiple times a day, she took him, demanded him, pulled him, scratched him. At first, Michael was thrilled, the first few days, but then she became more aggressive. Her kisses became harder. Her teeth sank into his lips until they bled. Her nails left deep crimson trails across his back. "I want you to hurt me, Michael," she whispered, gripping his hands. "How?" "Just do it." He did. She moaned from the pain, but in her eyes there was something wrong, something inhuman. Her gaze burned through him, like a predator, as if she wasn't making love to him, as if she was hunting him. By the 5th day of their honeymoon, Michael felt exhausted. He couldn't recover properly. His body felt drained. "Babe, maybe we should take a break," he asked awkwardly. Sophie froze. For a split second, her face twisted. Then she smiled. "Of course, love. I love you so much. I want you always." She dragged her nails down his neck, leaving red marks. "You won't deny me, will you?" Her voice was soft, but there was a warning in it, a feeling of danger. Michael forced a smile. "Of course not." Deep, distorted, inhuman. She was gasping. Michael felt pure horror. He shook her. "Sophie, hey babe, wake up!" Her eyes snapped open, completely black, and then she smiled. "I want you." On the 7th day, Michael woke up in the middle of the night. Something felt wrong. He could feel breathing on his face. He opened his eyes. Sophie was sitting on top of him, naked, staring directly into his eyes. "I know you were sleeping." Her voice was different, low, dead. He swallowed. "I'm tired." She leaned in closer. "I don't get tired." He couldn't move. She gripped his wrists, digging her nails deep into his skin. "You're mine, aren't you?" Yeah, he forced out. "Forever?" Yes. She pressed herself against him, and then he felt it. Something moving inside her, something warm, something alive. He shut his eyes, trying not to think about it. For the first time in his life, Michael didn't want sex. On the 10th day, he decided to go for a walk. He needed to get away from the house, to clear his head. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was just a wild honeymoon. But then, he saw her. Sophie stood by the water, completely naked. Her skin was unnaturally pale, and her hair floated around her as if she were already underwater. She stepped into the lake. The water didn't move. She walked in deeper, and when it reached her chest, she turned her head toward him, and he saw her eyes. They burned red. Her lips moved. "He is watching you, Michael." And then, the water started to boil. He ran back. His heart pounded against his ribs as he slammed the door shut. What was wrong with her? What the hell was happening? But when he turned around, Sophie was already there, dry, dressed, as if nothing had happened. She smiled. "Why do you look so scared, love?" He couldn't answer, because for the first time, in her eyes, he saw pure, endless hunger. Michael could no longer ignore it. Sophie had changed. She was still just as beautiful, just as passionate, but now her desires had gone beyond the limits of reality, and he felt it in every cell of his body. Sex had become aggressive. She demanded. She commanded. She scratched, bit, pressed down on him. She would straddle him at night, refusing to let him sleep. Even when he was exhausted, her body moved over him, her nails digging into his chest, her lips whispering into his ear, "You can give me more." He couldn't, but she didn't take no for an answer. On the 11th day, he stepped out of the shower and saw his reflection in the mirror. His skin was covered in deep purple bruises, as if he had been beaten, as if his body had been torn apart from the inside. But he didn't remember it. He didn't remember her touching him that hard, didn't remember her hurting him like that. But maybe he just hadn't noticed. Maybe he was just too drained. But in the mirror, he noticed something else. In the reflection, standing in the darkness of the bedroom behind him, Sophie was there, smiling. The next night, Sophie woke him again. She climbed on top of him, pressing her body against his, pinning down his hands. "Say my name, Michael," she whispered. She moved above him, her movements too fluid, too rhythmic, as if she wasn't just having sex, as if she was performing a ritual. "Say my name." Her voice deepened, lower, darker. He felt her nails pierce into his shoulders. The pain was real, too real. "Say it!" He tried desperately to turn away, but she grabbed his face. She forced him to look into her eyes, and in them, he saw something not human. At the peak of pleasure, he suddenly felt it. Something inside her, moving, alive. It was like something was shifting beneath her skin, as if her body wasn't truly her own, as if something else lived within her. Her eyes rolled back, and from her lips came a low, rasping moan, which turned into laughter, a deep, vibrating, unnatural laugh. And then he saw her mouth, a mouth that held no teeth, a mouth that held more tongues. On the 13th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He woke early in the morning while Sophie was still asleep and began packing his things. He couldn't stay here any longer. But when he reached the door, she was already waiting. "You weren't thinking of leaving, were you?" She hadn't been asleep. She knew. A wave of cold panic surged through him. I'm tired, Sophie," he said quietly. "I want to go home." Her smile widened. "Home?" She took a step closer. "But you're already home, Michael." And then his phone rang. His hand shook as he grabbed it, fumbling to answer. "Michael!" An old man's voice on the other end made him freeze. "This is Father Gabriel. You must come to the church. Immediately." A weight pressed against his chest, like ice-cold fingers wrapping around his heart. Sophie heard everything, but she didn't stop him. She only smiled. "Of course, Michael. Go." She didn't resist. She let him leave, and that terrified him more than anything. He drove like a madman, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Everything was wrong. He couldn't deny it anymore. Something had taken his wife, and it wasn't letting him go. When he reached the church, Father Gabriel was already waiting at the door. His face was ghostly pale. "I know what's happened to your wife, Michael." Michael froze. "What is it?" The priest closed his eyes, exhaled shakily, and whispered, "A demon." Michael stared at the priest, unable to speak. "What did you say?" Father Gabriel let out a heavy sigh, his face deathly pale. "What has possessed your wife is a demon." Michael laughed, a nervous, hollow, unnatural laugh. "You're joking, right? This is just exhaustion. Sophie is just... She is no longer Sophie, Michael." He froze. Father Gabriel opened his Bible, flipped through a few pages, and placed it before him. "When you were married in our church, the moment I said, 'So be it,' something entered Sophie." A cold chill ran through Michael's body. How is that possible?" "A curse." The priest closed his eyes. "Long ago, there were rituals that allowed demons to enter through sacred vows, through marriage, through oaths." Michael clenched his fists. "But why her?" Gabriel was silent for a moment. "The demon didn't choose her, it chose you." Michael went still. "What?" "You were the target from the beginning." His heart stopped. "But why?" The priest lowered his head. "You already know." Michael's mind flashed back to Sophie's words. "I want more, Michael. You can give me more. Why do you resist? Don't you feel how good it is? Desire, passion, lust." He had felt it. He had enjoyed it. But now he understood. It wasn't just her desires. It had been a trap. "You must stop this before it's too late." The priest's voice was tense. "You must not sleep with her again." Michael swallowed. "Why?" "Because at the moment of climax, the demon will fully possess you." A cold dread washed over him. "What do I do?" The priest placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Do not look into her eyes during sex. Do not say her name in that moment. And most importantly, do not let her inside you." Michael shuddered. "What do you mean, let her inside?" The priest fell silent, and then, in a whisper, he said, "You'll know when it happens." Michael arrived at the lake house after midnight. He expected her to be angry, to attack him, to try and stop him. But she was waiting in the bedroom, naked, lying on the bed. Her long hair cascaded over her shoulders, her eyes burning in the dim light. "You took so long," She reached out to him. "I was waiting for you." He froze at the doorway. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to resist. His body, it wanted her. She rose from the bed and walked toward him. Her breath was warm, her arms wrapped around his neck. "You want me, don't you, Michael?" He didn't answer. He felt her hunger, her desire. He closed his eyes as she pressed against him, and then she whispered in his ear, "I know you spoke to the priest." His eyes snapped open. He stumbled back, but she didn't stop. She gripped his wrists, her nails digging into his skin. "But it doesn't matter anymore," she smiled, "because you're already mine." His wife stood before him, naked, magnificent, desirable, and terrifying. "You're already mine, Michael." Her voice, it echoed inside his head, pulling him deeper, dragging him into a dark abyss from which he would never escape. He had to leave. Now he took a sharp step back, but her fingers tightened around his wrist. She was stronger than she should be. "You were going to leave, weren't you?" She pulled him closer, guiding him toward the bed. "You spoke to the priest, but can he give you what I give you?" She was smiling, but it wasn't a human smile. It was the smile of a predator. "You love me, don't you, Michael?" Her fingers slid across his chest. He could feel her trembling with excitement. "Stay." He knew if he stayed, he would die, but he couldn't resist. She straddled him, pushing him onto the edge of the bed. "Look at me, Michael." His eyelids trembled. He couldn't look. He shouldn't, but he did. Her eyes were endless, fire red, pulsating, and he sank into them. "Now you're mine, forever." Something cold touched his spine, like invisible fingers tracing down his back. His body felt heavier. It no longer belonged to him. It belonged to her. Sophie moaned, kissing his chest, his neck moving downward. But this wasn't sex. This was a sacrifice. He shut his eyes, feeling her body tighten around him. But it wasn't her. It was something else. Something dark, faceless, ravenous. He felt her nails dig deeper. His skin split open. Blood dripped down. He gasped but couldn't move. She pried his lips apart, shoving her tongue deep inside, until he was choking, until he couldn't breathe. He felt his bones give way. Her hands stretched him, twisting his joints. "You belong to me." His body convulsed in agony, but he couldn't scream. She sealed his mouth. She was filling him. She was taking him entirely. In his final moment, he saw the reflection in the mirror. He was no longer human. He was just a hollow shell. And Sophie was gone. Hovering over him was something else. Something with wings, with long skeletal fingers, with thousands of bottomless eyes, with thousands of open mouths filled with writhing tongues. "Now you are part of me." The next morning, the police found the house empty, blood everywhere, but no body, no one. Only the mirror remained. Etched into the glass, scratched by long, jagged claws, was a single message. The hunger is not yet satisfied. Darkness consumed him. He could no longer feel his body. He was sinking into an endless void, filled with whispers, moans, dying screams. "You belong to me, Michael." Sophie's voice now came from every direction at once. Multi-voiced, raspy, sweet. "You will never escape." He felt the touches. Warm, wet, sticky. They wrapped around him, caressed him, squeezed him, drained him. This wasn't sex. This was something ancient, primal, monstrous. This was consumption, the consumption of his soul. The police searched for Michael for 3 weeks. They found nothing. The lake house was soaked in blood, but not a single trace of the bodies, as if he had simply ceased to exist. His parents begged the investigators to keep looking, but there was no one left to find. Sophie was gone too, as if she had never existed. A year passed. In another church, another couple stood before the altar. The groom and bride gazed at each other, full of love. The priest smiled. So be it. But the moment the groom slid the ring onto the bride's finger, the lights flickered, the candles trembled. The groom suddenly felt something strange, as if something had just entered his body. The bride smiled, and for a brief second, her eyes flashed red.
If this story made your heart race, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button to support new chilling tales, and tap the bell. That way, you won't miss the next dose of horror. In the comments, let us know how much you enjoyed the story and which themes scare you the most. Who knows? Maybe your idea will become the next nightmare.